"Stay here, it's where you belong," my son Tom said, and drove off from the cemetery, leaving me in the dark. The taillights of his sleek black car vanished into the November mist, the engine's hum fading until it was just me and the silence of Dayton's oldest graveyard. My hands shook, not from the biting Ohio wind, but from the venom in his words. I stood by my husband's headstone, the granite cold under my fingertips, and felt the weight of betrayal settle into my bones. Tom and Kelly, my daughter-in-law, had cornered me here of all places, demanding I sell my house, the house I'd scraped and saved for, to bail them out of their debts. Their voices still echoed in my head, sharp as the crack of dry leaves underfoot. "You're ruining our future, Mom," Tom had snapped, his face twisted, as if I were the one who'd gambled away his savings. Kelly, leaning against the car with her arms crossed, had sneered. "What's the point of you holding on to that old dump? You're useless to us like this." I'd tried to speak, to explain that the house was all I had left, but my words drowned in their accusations. Then Kelly's final jab, tossed as she slid into the passenger seat. "You're already 1 foot in the grave." The car door slammed, and they were gone. I gripped the headstone tighter, my knuckles whitening. The wind howled, tugging at my coat, and the distant flicker of a street lamp cast jagged shadows across the graves. I was alone miles from home, no car, no plan. My legs ached, but I forced myself to move, stumbling over a loose stone as I started the long walk through the darkened suburbs. The cold stung my face, each breath a sharp reminder of my fragility. But something else stirred inside me, something hotter than the chill. Rage. They thought they could bury me here with Jim. They thought I'd break, that I'd hand over everything because they demanded it. My fingers brushed the phone in my pocket, and I pulled it out. The screen's glow harsh against the night. I opened the banking app, my thumb trembling as I scrolled to the account I shared with Tom, the one tied to the mortgage I'd been paying for him. The balance glared back. $12,347. Money he owed me, money he'd never mentioned. My breath caught, not from the cold, but from the clarity of it all. They'd been bleeding me dry. The walk felt endless. Bare trees loomed like sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. A dog barked somewhere, sharp and distant, and my shoes scuffed against the uneven sidewalk. My calves burned, my chest heaved, but I kept going, fueled by the fire in my gut. By the time I reached my street, the first hints of dawn bruised the horizon. My house stood at the end of the cul-de-sac, its sagging porch a testament to years of neglect. I fumbled with the keys, the metal cold against my palm, and pushed the door open. The familiar creak greeted me, but it felt different now, like the sound of a cage unlocking. I dropped the keys on the hall table, their clatter loud in the quiet. My reflection caught in the dusty mirror, pale, hollow-cheeked, but my eyes burned. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the glass, and whispered, "You'll find out who I am." The kitchen table was buried under a sea of bank statements, each one a brick in the wall Tom had built to trap me. My hands shook as I sorted through them, the numbers blurring under the dim glow of the overhead light. It was morning now, the gray November sun barely piercing the curtains, but sleep hadn't come. Not after the cemetery, not after Tom's words. I traced a line on the latest statement. $2,500, wired to his account last month. For his mortgage, the one he swore he'd been paying himself. I pushed the papers aside and leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight. The house smelled of stale coffee and dust, the kind that settles when you stop caring. I hadn't noticed how bad it had gotten. The chipped paint on the walls, the frayed rug underfoot. This place was my life, and I'd let it rot while I poured everything into Tom. I remembered the day I took out that loan for his college, sitting in a bank much like the one I'd visit soon. I'd dreamed of a trip to New York, a week at an art seminar, sketching in Central Park. Instead, I signed the papers and handed him his future. He'd hugged me then, called me his hero. Now he called me useless. A knock at the door jolted me. I stood, smoothing my sweater, and opened it to find John, my neighbor, holding a thermos of coffee. His flannel shirt was tucked neatly, his smile warm but cautious. "Morning, Beth. Saw your light on early. Everything okay?" I forced a nod, stepping aside to let him in. "Just couldn't sleep. You want coffee?" He waved off the offer but lingered in the doorway. "Saw Tom downtown yesterday, strutting around like he owns the place. New car too. Shiny thing, probably cost a fortune." His tone was light, but his eyes searched mine. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. He's always had a taste for nice things. Too nice, I thought, my mind flashing to the bank statement. "On my dime." John shrugged, stepping back. "Well, if you need anything, holler. I'm just across the street." He tipped his cap and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I returned to the table, my pulse quickening. A new car. While I paid his debts, the rage from last night flared again, but this time it was sharper, focused. I grabbed my phone and dialed the bank, my voice steady as I asked for a consultation. The clerk's voice was crisp, professional, explaining my options. You can freeze the payments, Mrs. Crow. The mortgage is in your name after all. I scribbled notes, my handwriting growing firmer with each word. Control. I could take it back. I hung up and stared at the papers, the numbers no longer a blur but a map. A knock sounded again, but I ignored it, my eyes falling on an old photo of Tom, tucked among the clutter. He was 10, grinning at a county fair. Ice cream smeared on his chin. I picked it up, my thumb brushing the glass. Then I opened a drawer and tossed it inside, the frame clattering against junk. You're not my son anymore, I said, the words heavy but true. I stood grabbing my coat. The bank was waiting. The bank smelled of paper and disinfectant, the kind of sterile calm that made my pulse feel louder. I sat across from the clerk, a young man with a crisp tie and a name tag that read Kevin. My pen hovered over the document, steady now, unlike 2 nights ago on that freezing walk home. So this stops the payments? I asked, my voice even. Kevin nodded, adjusting his glasses. Yes, Mrs. Crow. The mortgage is in your name. You can freeze the account today. The borrower, your son, will be notified within 48 hours. His tone was neutral, but I caught a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. He didn't know the half of it. I signed, the pen scratched loud in the quiet. Each stroke felt like carving my name into something new, something mine. I thought back to 3 years ago, sitting in Kelly's empty cafe before it opened, handing her a check for $10,000 to chase her dreams. She'd taken the money with a smirk, muttering about my old school ideas, as if my sacrifice was a joke. Now her dreams were about to hit a wall. I left the bank and headed downtown, the November air sharp but bearable. Kelly's cafe sat on a busy corner, its glass front buzzing with mid-morning chatter. The sign read Brew and Bloom, her attempt at being trendy. I pushed the door open, the bell jingling, and the smell of espresso hit me like a wave. Kelly stood behind the counter, her blonde hair pulled tight, her smile fake as she handed a latte to a customer. Then she saw me and the smile dropped. Beth. Her voice was sharp, like I'd trespassed. What are you doing here? I slid onto a bar stool, folding my hands. Just wanted a coffee. Black, please. My tone was light, but my eyes locked on hers. She hesitated, then poured the coffee, the mug clinking as she set it down. We don't need you stirring up trouble, she hissed, leaning closer. Tom told me about the cemetery. You're out of line. I sipped the coffee, letting the heat burn my tongue. Trouble? I'm just catching up. Heard Tom's having some financial hiccups. I paused, watching her face tighten. Must be tough with the new car and all. Her eyes narrowed and she slammed a rag on the counter. You don't get to meddle in our lives. You're nobody, Beth. Nobody. I smiled, slow and deliberate, and reached into my purse. I pulled out an envelope, blank, but she didn't know that, and set it on the counter. Found this in the mail. Looks important. Something about the mortgage. I slid it toward her, my fingers lingering. Her hand twitched, but she didn't touch it. Not yet. Get out, she snapped, her voice low but shaking. Take your games and go. I stood, leaving a $5 bill next to the mug. Keep the change, I said, my voice soft but edged. I walked out, the bell jingling again, and didn't look back. I knew she'd open that envelope the second I was gone. Her panic blooming like the name of her precious cafe. The street was alive with noise, cars, voices, the hum of Dayton waking up. I kept walking, my steps light for the first time in years. A smile tugged at my lips, small but real. This was just the beginning. The attic door groaned as I pushed it open, the sound sharp in the quiet of my house. Dust swirled in the slanted light, catching on cobwebs that draped the corners like forgotten lace. Boxes of Tom's old clothes and school projects teetered in stacks, relics of a life I'd once poured everything into. I stepped inside, my boots scuffing the warped floorboards, and felt a spark I hadn't known in years. This wasn't just a room. It was a battlefield, and I was ready to fight. I started with the boxes, dragging them to the hall with a strength that surprised me. My arms strained, my breath came in short puffs, but I didn't stop. Each one I tossed out felt like shedding a piece of the woman who'd let Tom and Kelly walk over her. I uncovered my old easel, its wood chipped but sturdy, and set it in the center of the room. The air smelled of mildew and memory, but when I cracked open a can of paint, the sharp tang of acrylic woke something in me. I was 20 again, standing in a college art class, my professor's voice in my ear. You've got a gift, Beth. Don't bury it. I'd buried it anyway, marriage, motherhood, Tom's endless needs. But not anymore. The doorbell buzzed, pulling me back. I wiped my hands on my jeans and headed downstairs, opening the door to a courier in a red cap, holding a wrapped canvas. "Elizabeth Crowe?" he asked, glancing at his clipboard. "Got your delivery." "That's me," I said, signing for it. The canvas was heavy, pristine, a blank slate. He grinned, nodding at the paint smudged on my fingers. "Back at the hobby, huh? Keeps the soul young." I smiled tight but polite. "It's not a hobby. It's a reckoning." His grin faltered, but he tipped his cap and left. I carried the canvas upstairs, my steps lighter now, and propped it on the easel. The blank white stared back, daring me to begin. I dipped a brush in crimson, the bristles gleaming, and made the first stroke. It wasn't gentle. A slash of color, jagged and raw, like the greed I'd seen in Tom's eyes. I worked fast, layering blues and blacks, the canvas becoming a storm of betrayal. My hands moved with a certainty I hadn't felt in decades. I remembered Kelly's sneer, Tom's cold demands, and let them fuel each stroke. When I stepped back, the painting pulsed with something alive, something dangerous. It wasn't just art. It was a weapon. I grabbed a notebook, my pen scratching as I jotted ideas. A gallery show, maybe. Something public, where Dayton's gossip-hungry crowd could see Tom and Kelly for what they were. I'd paint their sins, hang them for all to see. The thought made my pulse race, not with fear but with purpose. I set the brush down, the paint still wet on my hands, and felt a surge of power. This is my voice, I thought. And they'll hear it. A creak sounded downstairs, faint but unmistakable. The front door. Someone was in the house. The front door slammed, the sound rattling the windows in my living room. I sat in the armchair, a mug of tea cooling in my hands, and didn't flinch. Tom's heavy footsteps stormed closer, his shadow stretching across the floor before he appeared in the doorway. His face was red, eyes wild, a vein pulsing at his temple. "You've ruined us," he shouted, jabbing a finger at me. "You froze the mortgage? Are you out of your mind?" I tilted my head, studying him like a stranger. The boy I'd raised was gone, replaced by this man who thought he could bully me into submission. I set the mug down, the porcelain clinking softly, and folded my hands. "Sit down, Tom," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. He didn't move. I remembered the years I'd bitten my tongue, listening to him complain about my small life while he demanded more money, more time, more of me. Once, at a Christmas dinner, he'd scoffed at my thrift store sweater, saying I embarrassed him in front of Kelly's friends. I'd laughed it off then. "Not now. You think you can just cut us off?" He spat, pacing the room. The lamp cast jagged shadows on the walls, his movements jerky, like a caged animal. "We'll lose the house, Mom. You want that on your conscience? You're selfish, you know that." I leaned forward just enough to catch his eye. "Selfish?" I said, letting the word hang. That's a bold word from someone who's been living off my savings. My fingers brushed my phone, tucked in my pocket, and I tapped the record button without looking. A trick I'd learned from true crime podcasts. Simple but effective. His face twisted. "You owe us. After everything we've done for you, you ungrateful." He stopped, catching himself, but I didn't let it go. "Done for me," I said, my tone sharper now, like a blade sliding free. "Like what, Tom? The new car? The vacations? Or the loans you took out in my name?" It was a guess, but the way his eyes widened told me I'd hit the mark. He froze, then recovered, his voice dropping to a growl. "You don't know what you're talking about. I had to take those loans. You weren't helping enough." The admission slipped out, careless and raw, and I felt a thrill in my chest. "Got you." I stood, slow and deliberate, keeping my eyes on his. "You're right, Tom. I haven't been helping enough. I've been helping too much." I stepped closer, my voice low. "But that ends now." He laughed, a harsh bark, and threw up his hands. "You're pathetic. You think you can scare me? I'll sue you, Mom. I'll take this house, everything." He turned, storming toward the door, and slammed it so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I stood still, the silence settling like dust. Then I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording, the timestamp glowing. 7:42 p.m. His words, his confession, all captured. I smiled, small and cold. "You buried yourself, Tom," I thought, slipping the phone back into my pocket. The phone rang, shrill in the quiet. I glanced at the screen. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. The bell above Kelly's cafe door jingled as I stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of roasted coffee and sugar. Brew and Bloom was packed, the lunchtime crowd chattering over clinking mugs and the hiss of the espresso machine. Kelly stood behind the counter, her apron stained, her smile brittle as she rang up a customer. I slid into a seat near the register, setting my folder of papers on the table with a deliberate thud. The top sheet, carefully angled for her eyes, Red tax audit notice in bold red ink. It was fake, printed off my ancient inkjet, but she wouldn't know that. I remembered the last family dinner 2 years ago, when Kelly had leaned across the table, her wine glass dangling, and called me a boring housewife who'd never understand ambition. Tom had laughed and I'd swallowed the hurt. Now, watching her dart between orders, her ponytail fraying, I felt no pity, only focus. She spotted me, her eyes narrowing. "Back again," she said, wiping her hands on a towel as she approached. "What's your game this time?" I smiled, folding my hands over the folder. "No game, Kelly. Just here for a latte. Make it quick, I've got places to be." My voice was light, almost friendly, but I held her gaze until she turned away, muttering under her breath. She poured the latte, the foam spilling over the edge, and slammed the mug down. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she said, her voice low, meant for me alone. "Messing with our lives. You think you're clever." I took a sip, the heat sharp on my lips, and leaned back. "Messing? I'm just curious how the cafe's doing. Must be tough. Keeping up with expenses." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Especially with Tom's cash flow issues." Her face flushed and she glanced at the folder, her eyes snagging on the red ink. "What's that?" she snapped, her voice louder now, drawing a few curious glances from nearby tables. I shrugged, nudging the folder closer. "Paperwork. You know how it is, bills, notices. Things pile up when you're not careful." I kept my tone casual, but my pulse thrummed. She reached for the folder, then stopped, her hand hovering. "You're pathetic," she hissed, but her voice cracked. "You think you can scare me with your little stunts?" She grabbed the folder, flipping it open, and her eyes widened as she scanned the fake notice. A customer coughed, another whispered, and the air in the cafe shifted, heavy with attention. I stood, leaving a $10 bill under the mug. "Careful, Kelly," I said, my voice soft but clear. "People are watching." I turned, walking out as her shout followed me. "You're nothing, Beth. Nothing." The bell jingled, and I caught the murmur of the crowd, their eyes on her now, not me. Outside, the December air was crisp, the street alive with holiday shoppers. I kept walking, my breath visible in the cold, and thought, "Your business is sinking, Kelly, and I'm holding the anchor." A text buzzed on my phone. I glanced down, expecting junk, but the message stopped me cold. "We need to talk. Now." Tom's office smelled of leather and ambition, but the clutter betrayed him. Papers spilling off the desk, a half-empty coffee mug teetering on a stack of folders. I stepped inside, my heels clicking on the hardwood, and set my folder down with a soft thud. Tom looked up from his laptop, his tie loosened, his eyes narrowing. "What do you want, Mom?" he said, his voice thick with irritation, as if I were a stray dog wandering in. I smiled, small and practiced, and took the chair across from him. The office was a showpiece, sleek furniture, a framed degree on the wall, but it felt hollow, like a stage set for a play no one watched. "I'm here to help," I said, my tone warm, almost maternal. "You've been under a lot of stress, haven't you?" I leaned forward, just enough to seem earnest, and slid the folder toward him. He snorted, leaning back in his chair. "Help? After you tanked my mortgage? Spare me." But his eyes flicked to the folder, curious despite himself. I remembered the summer he'd promised to pay back the loan I'd taken for his house, his voice smooth as he booked a trip to the Bahamas instead. I believed him then. "Not now." "I've been thinking," I said, opening the folder to reveal a neatly printed business plan, its cover bold with the words Midwest Cafe Ventures. "There's a new chain moving into Dayton. Small but growing fast. They're looking for investors." I paused, watching his jaw tighten. "I heard they're offering quick returns. Thought you might want in." He grabbed the folder, flipping through it with a scowl. "Why are you telling me this? You don't know anything about business." His tone was sharp, but his fingers lingered on the pages, tracing the fake numbers I'd spent hours crafting. The plan was a mirage, vague promises, inflated projections, a company that didn't exist. But Tom wouldn't check. He never did. I shrugged, folding my hands. Maybe I'm tired of fighting. Maybe I just want us to be family again. My voice softened, but my eyes stayed cold. He didn't notice. He was too busy scanning the document, his greed waking up like a dog smelling meat. "This looks promising," he muttered, almost to himself. "How'd you even hear about this?" He looked at me, suspicious, but the numbers were already pulling him in. "A friend mentioned it," I said, vague and breezy. "Said it's a sure thing, but you'd need to move fast." I stood, smoothing my coat. "Just thought I'd share. Do what you want with it." I left the folder on his desk, knowing he'd cling to it like a lifeline. He didn't stand, didn't say goodbye, just kept staring at the papers. I walked out, the glass door swinging shut behind me, and pulled my notebook from my purse. I scribbled, Tom took the bait. Step 1 complete. My pen pressed hard. The ink bold. Your fall's coming, I thought. And you won't see it. The elevator dinged and I stepped inside, my reflection sharp in the polished walls. As the doors closed, my phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line stopped me. Gallery space confirmed. The gallery smelled of fresh paint and possibility, its white walls gleaming under soft lights. I walked the polished floor, my steps echoing in the empty space, and imagined my paintings here. Each one a shard of truth about Tom and Kelly. Linda, the curator, followed me, her clipboard tucked under one arm. Her smile warm but professional. This is your stage, Elizabeth, she said, gesturing to the vast room. Your work's going to stop people in their tracks. I nodded, my fingers brushing the edge of a blank wall. That's the plan, I said, my voice steady. I'd spent years hiding my sketches, tucking them in drawers because I feared judgment. Once, at a neighbor's barbecue, I'd shown a friend a charcoal drawing, and her polite "it's nice" had burned worse than criticism. Now I didn't care who judged. These walls would speak for me. Linda flipped through her notes. We've set the date for January 15th. I've seen your sketches, raw, powerful. People will talk. She paused, her eyes meeting mine. What's the story behind them? They feel personal. I smiled, deflecting. Just life, Linda. Things I've seen, things I've felt. I wasn't ready to spill the truth, not yet. The paintings would do that, exposing Tom's greed, Kelly's cruelty, in colors no one could ignore. I'd invited half of Dayton's business crowd, people who knew Tom's name and his deals. They'd see. Back in my attic studio, the air was thick with turpentine and focus. I stood before a new canvas, my brush heavy with ochre, and carved out shapes that screamed betrayal. A jagged line for Tom's lies, a smear of gray for Kelly's scorn. My hands moved fast, certain, the paint a language I'd forgotten I spoke. I remembered the cemetery, Tom's words. Stay here, it's where you belong. And let the anger guide my strokes. This wasn't just art. It was justice. I stepped back, wiping sweat from my brow, and grabbed my notebook. I jotted names for the guest list. Local investors, a reporter from the Dayton Daily News, even Tom's old business partner. Each name was a brick in the wall I was building around him and Kelly. I set the pen down, my pulse steady, and looked at the canvas. These strokes will tell my story, I thought, the words a vow. The floorboards creaked downstairs, a sound too heavy for the house's usual groans. I froze, my brush hovering, and listened. Someone was moving in the hall. The cafe was a ghost of itself, the once bustling brew and bloom reduced to a handful of customers nursing cold coffee at wobbly tables. The air smelled of stale pastries and desperation, the neon sign flickering like a dying pulse. I pushed the door open, the bells jingle hollow, and set a glossy poster on the counter. Elizabeth Crow. Exhibition of Truth, January 15th. The words gleamed, bold and unmissable. Kelly stood behind the register, her face gaunt, her apron hanging loose. She saw the poster, and her hands froze mid-motion, a rag dangling from her fingers. I remembered the day she'd come to my house, complaining about a leaky roof, then laughed when I asked for help with my own repairs. Old widows should live simpler, she'd said, her voice dripping with pity. Now her empire was crumbling, and I was the one holding the hammer. Afternoon, Kelly, I said, my voice bright like I was greeting an old friend. I slid the poster closer, my fingers lingering on its edge. Thought you might want to see this. Big event coming up. Her eyes flicked to the poster, then back to me, wide with something close to fear. What are you playing at? She said, her voice low, almost a growl. The barista, a nervous kid wiping down the espresso machine, glanced over but stayed quiet. I leaned against the counter, casual, my smile unwavering. Playing? I'm just sharing. The gallery's expecting a crowd. Lots of familiar faces. I paused, watching her jaw tighten. Heard business has been slow. Those rumors about the tax audit must be stinging. She slammed the rag down, her voice rising. You did this. You spread those lies, didn't you? You're trying to ruin me. A customer looked up, startled, and the barista flinched. Kelly's hands shook, her knuckles white against the counter. I tilted my head, my tone soft but pointed. Ruin you? I'm just an artist, Kelly. Painting what I see. You should come to the show. Might be enlightening. I tapped the poster once, then stepped back, letting the words sink in. Her eyes darted to the text again, and I saw the panic bloom, raw and ugly. You're a nobody, she spat, but her voice cracked and the words lacked bite. You think some stupid paintings will change anything? Get out. She pointed to the door, her arm trembling. I shrugged, leaving the poster where it lay. Suit yourself, I said, turning to go. But people are talking, Kelly. And they'll talk more after the 15th. The bell jingled as I stepped outside, her shout echoing behind me. You'll regret this. I heard her snap at the barista, her voice fraying, and the murmur of the remaining customers, their curiosity piqued. The January air bit at my cheeks, but I walked on, my steps light. You're walking into my trap, I thought, picturing Kelly at the gallery, her world unraveling. My phone vibrated in my pocket, and I pulled it out. A voicemail, no caller ID. I pressed play and Tom's voice hissed through. You've gone too far, Mom. Meet me tomorrow or I swear you'll pay. The attic studio glowed under the soft light of a single lamp, its beam catching the wet paint on my latest canvas. Crimson streaks cut through a field of black, a silent scream of betrayal that felt alive under my brush. I stepped back, wiping my hands on a rag, and surveyed the room. Canvases leaned against the walls, each one a piece of the truth I'd unveil at the gallery. My notebook lay open on the table, a checklist of names, journalists, investors, Dayton's elite. Each one a witness to Tom and Kelly's downfall. I ran my finger down the list, my pulse steady, every detail in place. I remembered being 22, sketching in a cramped apartment, dreaming of a gallery show while classmates planned theirs. I told myself I wasn't good enough, that family came first. Tom's diapers, Jim's late shifts, the mortgage, they'd buried that dream. Now decades later I was digging it up and it felt like breathing again. I gathered a stack of posters and invitations, their glossy surfaces catching the light. Elizabeth Crow. An exhibition of truth, January 15th. The words were bold, a promise I'd keep. I tucked them into a bag and headed to the post office, the January air sharp against my cheeks. The office hummed with activity, scanners beeping, voices overlapping. I slid my stack across the counter to a young clerk, his badge reading Mike. He raised an eyebrow, counting the envelopes. Big event, huh? He said, his tone light. This many invites, you must be throwing the party of the year. I smiled, folding my hands. Something better, I said, my voice calm but edged with pride. A moment people won't forget. He chuckled, oblivious, and stamped the envelopes with quick, practiced motions. I watched them disappear into a bin, each one a spark that would ignite the fire I'd planned. Back home, I returned to the studio, the smell of turpentine grounding me. I picked up my brush, adding a final stroke to the canvas. A slash of gold, defiance breaking through the dark. My phone buzzed, a reminder of a meeting with Linda tomorrow to finalize the gallery setup. I set the brush down and opened my notebook, scribbling. All pieces in place. They'll face the truth. The words felt like a vow, my hand steady as I wrote. I looked at the canvases, their colors fierce, and thought, my strokes will make them tremble. A knock at the door broke the silence, sharp and unexpected. I froze, my heart quickening. It was late, too late for visitors. I set the notebook down and moved toward the stairs, my steps quiet. The gallery buzzed with voices, the air alive with the clink of wine glasses and the soft hum of anticipation. My paintings hung on the walls, their colors bold under the spotlights. Swirls of black and red, jagged lines that screamed greed. Cold blues that whispered scorn. I stood in the center, my black dress simple but sharp, my hands steady as I scanned the crowd. Businessmen in suits, a reporter scribbling notes, locals whispering about the new artist. And there near the back, Tom and Kelly, their faces tight, their eyes darting like cornered animals. I stepped forward, the crowd quieting, and raised my glass. Thank you for coming, I said, my voice clear, carrying over the room. These paintings are my truth, inspired by people I've known, choices they've made. I paused, my gaze brushing Tom and Kelly, people who thought they could bury others to get ahead. I remembered the cemetery, the bite of the wind as Tom's words cut me. Stay here, it's where you belong. That night had cracked me open, but it had also set me free. Now I was whole and they were the ones breaking. The crowd moved to the paintings, their murmurs growing as they studied the work. One canvas showed a river of coins choking a shadowed figure, Tom's greed laid bare. Another held a pair of icy eyes above a void, Kelly's disdain captured in strokes. Whispers spread, names slipping through the air, Crow. Tom Crow. Isn't that his mother? I watched Tom's face redden, his fists clenching, while Kelly clutched his arm, her lips pale. Tom pushed through the crowd, his voice loud, unsteady. This is slander, he shouted, pointing at me. She's lying, trying to ruin us. Heads turned, but the guests' eyes were cold, unimpressed. A woman near me muttered, he sounds guilty. Kelly stepped forward, her voice shrill. She's nobody. These are just scribbles, nothing. But her words drowned in the crowd's chatter, their attention fixed on the paintings. I caught Linda's eye, the curator nodding slightly, her face alight with approval. I raised my hand, silencing the room. Art doesn't lie, I said, my tone calm but firm. It shows what we try to hide. Look closer and you'll see. I gestured to the canvases, and the crowd pressed forward, their whispers now a roar. Tom grabbed Kelly's arm, pulling her toward the door. Their steps hurried, their faces burning under the guest stares. I watched them go, my heart steady, and thought, you got what you earned. The crowd's applause broke through, warm and real, but my eyes stayed on the empty doorway where they'd vanished. A hand touched my arm, Linda, her smile wide. Elizabeth, you've done it, she said. But there's someone here you need to meet. The morning sun spilled through the windows of my new bungalow, its light pooling on the hardwood floor I'd polished yesterday. The house was small, tucked on Dayton's quiet outskirts, but it was mine, bought with the sales from my paintings, every dollar a step away from the past. I set a box of brushes on the kitchen table, their wooden handles smooth under my fingers, and smiled. The air smelled of fresh paint and coffee, a new kind of home. I remembered the years I'd felt invisible, my days swallowed by Tom's demands, Kelly's sneers, the weight of a house I couldn't afford to fix. I'd been a shadow moving through their lives, giving until I was empty. Now unpacking a crate of art supplies in a space I'd built, I was solid, real. I was me. The phone rang, its chime soft but clear. I answered, and a man's voice came through, polished and eager. Miss Crow? This is Daniel Harper, art dealer from Cincinnati. I saw your show last week. Your work. It's extraordinary. I'd like to propose a solo exhibition at our downtown gallery. 6 months from now, prime season. Are you interested? I leaned against the counter, my breath steady. I'm interested, I said, my voice warm, certain. Send me the details. I'm ready to share more. He laughed, delighted. You're going to take the art world by storm, Miss Crow. I'll be in touch. The call ended and I set the phone down, my fingers brushing a blank canvas I'd propped against the wall. A new story waiting to be told. A letter slid through the mail slot, landing with a soft thud. I picked it up, recognizing the handwriting of John, my old neighbor. I tore it open, skimming the lines. Kelly's cafe shut down last week. Boarded up, gone. Tom's business collapsed. 2 bad investments, they say. They've left town, no one knows where. I folded the letter and set it aside, my heart quiet. No anger, no triumph, just a faint relief. Like closing a book I'd long stopped reading. I walked to the back room, my new studio, its windows wide and bright. A canvas waited on the easel, and I dipped a brush in soft green, painting the curve of a hill under a clear sky. No shadows, no rage, just light, freedom. My strokes were slow, deliberate, each one a piece of the life I was building. I stepped back, the paint still wet, and thought, I'm home at last. A breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the scent of winter grass. I turned, noticing a sketchbook I hadn't opened yet, its pages blank, waiting. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what impressed you the most about this story. Also, we recommend you to listen to our previous story. It is even more shocking. Just click on the box on the left to play it. Thank you for watching.